Good morning to the speaker, the educators, and the members of the floor. So the motion for today's debate is this House would have monetary criminal fines be based on the income of perpetrators as opposed to the severity of the crimes. And we, the government side, are for the motion. So before I dive into our case, I would like to define a few key terms in the motion. So monetary criminal fines. Monetary criminal fines are fines, something as compensation that criminals have to pay in compensate of the crimes that they committed. In this case, monetary here specifically means crimes that involves money, such as fraud or stealing or lying to be able to acquire money. So this is not to be confused with any other crimes, for example, trigger warning, rape or murder, etc., etc. So income in this motion refers to the amount of money that this said person, which in this motion is the criminal, receive on, it could be a monthly basis or a daily basis across a lot of sources. This income determines a few things, for example, your social status or your ability to provide some, to able to receive some needs. And severity in this motion means the amount, the crimes, how much people it impacted, how negatively impacts it has on people. For example, in terms of this motion, monetary criminal fines, monetary crime that have a lot of severity is fraud that have cost a lot of money, that they steal billions of dollars as opposed to something that costs only a few ringgit. So I would start by my first point, my first argument, which is by putting monetary criminal fines based on the income of the perpetrators as opposed to the severity of the crime, is it produces more effective punishment to the criminals. So why did I say so? First of all, I would like to mention the situation of our government, the economic situation. So the current situation, there's a big gap, sometimes there's a big gap between the really poor and the really rich. So the bottom 10% or the top 10%, there's a really big gap between them. And as time goes on, it will only happen when the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer. And by putting criminal fines based on their income instead of their severity of the crimes, it provides more effective punishments. Because, okay, we have to look at the purpose of punishment. Punishments are meant to place on some people for having the wrongdoings, because you are trying to get them to regret something by having them feel the impact. And the amount of impact is how much they would likely regret the actions. So for example, if a child were to punish to get out late of school for 1 minute, they would not feel the impact, so they would repeat their wrongdoings. So, I guess, okay, so in this case, I have to mention that 100 ringgit for the poor is not the same as 100 ringgit for the rich. The rich might look down upon it, 100 ringgit is nothing to them, but for the poor it could mean anything, it could mean everything. It could mean their basic survival, something that they need for money. So by adjusting these fines to their income, they would feel the more impact, the more severity of the impact, it's more adjusted to their conditions, so they will feel more remorseful, and therefore, yes.
Wouldn't this incentivize poor people to do crime, considering the fact that some crimes now become cheaper?
Okay, yes, I will get to that point later. It's actually in my state. Okay. So, like I said before, what was that? So they'll feel more impact. So for example, if you were to get a really rich people, this person, they own $1 billion company, for example, and they committed fraud, they steal $1 million, for example. And when the court were to give punishments based on the severity of the crime, they might need to pay something. They might need to pay $1 million in compensation, but that might be something that they do not feel the impact upon, because to them it's such a small amount of money that they do not care for it, so they will not feel remorse, so it's something that they might do over and over again. But if it was to something, say vice versa, it's based on their income. This person would have to pay because their income is a lot, they're billionaires, they have to pay a lot, even though their crimes to them is not that big, they will feel the impact and they will less likely be able to do it again. But okay, say, for a poor person, if a poor person committed such crimes, for example, they steal a few ringgit because they wanted to buy something, and we punish them by giving them, based on their income, and we punish them lightly, even that lightly, even if to us it's lightly, it might not be to them. To them it might mean a lot of ringgit. So like the third speaker of the opposition mentioned before, what if they take over, what if they exploit this chance, the poor exploit this chance by stealing a lot of money because they know that the fine is going to be based upon their income and not based upon the severity of the crime. So I had an argument for this. So this, we have to take note that when somebody steals something, for example, if you committed fraud, you steal $1 billion ringgit, And when you get into court, you have to pay that money back. You don't get to keep the money and only get fines. You have to pay the money back and you will receive fines too. So the people, the poor, will not be able to exploit that, because in the end of the day, they will have to give back the money that they steal anyway. So now, I also would like to put emphasis on the term monetary criminal fines. Like I said before, it is only, just to clear the confusion, it's only for crimes involving money. So in conclusion, everything that I said before is that by placing criminal fines based on the income of the perpetrators instead of the severity, it creates a more effective punishment, because the person will feel more impact towards it. Okay, take another example of two people of a different social class committing the same crime, stealing the same amount of money. So for the person A, the richer people, they might find that, let's say they both steal 100 ringgit. The richer person, and they will be fined, say, 500 because they steal 100 ringgit. To them, it's nothing, so they will be able to commit that more. And to the poor person, the 100 ringgit, they have to be paid 500, they have to pay 500 ringgit again. To them, it seems like a lot. So it will be a lot of impact to the person. It's unjust to the poor, and it's also too unfair for the rich. So, like I said before, the government believes that you should be focusing on the income of the perpetrators instead of the severity of the crime, because in that way, you will produce a more effective punishment, because they will feel the impact that is more necessary to them instead of having to pay for something that might not mean anything to them, and therefore avoiding them from taking advantage of the situation. That's all from me. Thank you.
Alright, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Look, we think that on opposition side, what we're trying to debate here is how and whether or not these criminals will be put onto a certain pedestal for them to be held accountable for their crimes, and for it to actually align with the system of justice. And essentially so, what kind of message does it send towards society and towards the public eye, which we'll be debating towards on opposition bench. Now, what will be the framework of my debate today? First, a couple of responses towards the problematic ideas coming from their side. Second of all is relaying the premises of what we're going to do throughout this entire debate. And lastly, upon my one premise. Okay, first, let's challenge the idea and characterization on what exactly does this debate mean in the first place. Look, what they're trying to claim is that the monetary criminal fines are crimes relating towards things like money, such as robbery and fraud. We still believe that even though this is pretty wrong in the motion, we still are going to debate on that front, saying that, look, individuals who do these crimes in the first place, they're never really giving you a real incentive on why they would do it in the first place, such as the crime of necessity, for example. The idea is that, that to paint you a picture, it's like, for example, a poor person stealing, for a poor person to really steal 100 ringgit, for example, is because they require that money to actually live in comparison to crimes of necessity for these billionaires in the first place. Look, there is no real incentive for them to actually quote-unquote steal in the first place, considering the fact that they are billionaires and they already have a financially stable ground to begin with. But since we're debating on that front, we say that we still go over this matter in the first place. Now, to change the characterization of what actually should be debated in the first place is that the idea of monetary criminal fines is that crimes that necessitate funding after being caught doing it in the first place, such as things like smoking, things like speeding, where you are required and impounded a fine in the first place. Now, this is the thing that they were lacking, but other than that, there were a few holes in that case. For example, how exactly are you going to enact this policy to the public, and what would the public eye react to in the first place throughout this debate? Second of all, how exactly are you going to find out the income of these individuals in the first place? We could say that these individuals could lie, but they never really told you how exactly they are going to have that sort of check in the first place. No logical links whatsoever, and they just asserted that, hey, we're going to find these criminals based on the criminal money-related activity that they have gone through in the first place. It goes to show how many pros there are in the case in the first place. Now, let's move on to premises. Two main premises that exist throughout this entire debate. First, how you go against the principle of justice and what kind of message does it send to the public eye. Second premise is the lack of accountability that comes towards their side of the world. Now, premise. how exactly does it go against the principle of justice, and how exactly, what kind of message does it send to society? The principle of justice, really, the reason why the justice system was enacted in the first place for decades, because it actually took it actually took into account how severe the crimes are and what should the punishment be in the first place for the severity of such crimes in the first place. Now, we believe that justice relays a message of equality, considering the fact that the weight of crime is measured balancedly and was on an equilibrium on all sides, in comparison to in their side of the house, where it's relaying a message where it's different individuals based on different incomes at the end, and ultimately what you're letting is these people go away in the first place. Why exactly is that so? First, let's look at the rationality of public who does these crimes that require fines in the first place. Things such as speeding or things such as smoking for the higher class in the first place. Now, the real incentive for them to not do these things in the first place is because the fines were hefty at first. Sure, things like smoking towards the public eye, they view it as something, the rationality for them to smoke in public because, they feel like it wouldn't have a direct impact towards patrons of a certain restaurant, or they feel that it wouldn't essentially be impactful towards society if they were to smoke in the first place. And considering the fact that now they are being taken into account how much their incomes are in the first place, we would say and contend that these individuals would get away with more of these activities in the first place. Why exactly so? People with lower income who smoke, who didn't really care regarding the consequences of smoking, or what exactly the consequences of smoking or the impact it would have towards the public. Now, basically, so what government side is doing is letting these people go on a certain leeway for them to do these things in the first place, because it gives a sense of conveniency for them, which will be expanded upon my second speaker. Now, let's look at what kind of message it relays towards society in the first place. First, we say that the weight of crimes, the weight of punishment does not really balanced in terms of society. So how society will view it in 50 years or so? They will view it as these crimes as something that is it's not clearly weighted upon in the first place. These crimes are not really something that shouldn't be taken into account in terms of volatility and what the impact is to them in the first place. And the weight of probability that this will happen is more likely than not high, because of the fact that you're judging these individuals based on their income levels in the first place. So what is the trade-off then? First, on government side, people are acting out of convenience because of the fact that they are being judged for how much they make, how much income they incur in the first place, in comparison to our side, where we actually utilize the system of justice, which weighs onto the idea of severity, which weighs into the idea on how it works in the first, basically weighs upon the idea of the severity of the crimes in the first place and how exactly should be taken into account. Because impacts on things like smoking and speeding gives a huge impact to society. Speeding being you could actually hurt someone. Both of them being that you could hurt someone and you can have a direct impact, but they view it as out of convenience, which will be talked upon by my second speaker. Now, what have I given you throughout this entire debate? First, I asked a few questions towards opposition side, towards their goals in mechanization and mechanisms and such, which, if passed along to the second speaker, would be much too late. First, challenge their characterization on what actually needs to be debated upon, and we debated on their front as well. Thirdly, and most importantly, is that we have given you argumentation why I believe that this thing is justified and rational to not begin with in the first place. And ultimately, this is why we take this debate.
That monetary criminal fines should be based on the income of the perpetrator as opposed to the severity of the crime. Okay, so today the opposition has said that if we implement this motion, which is we are basing on the income, it will go against justice, because justice punishes the perpetrators based on the severity of the crime and weight. But again, why do we punish? We have to question ourselves, why do we punish? So that the perpetrator will feel regret, will feel remorse, and will be better. But let's take an example. Someone from a higher income, from maybe T20, they earn hundreds and thousands of dollars a month, and someone that earns 100 ringgit, someone from the B10, lower income. Okay, let's say they do a minor a minor crime, that will only require a fine of 50 ringgit. 50 ringgit to the B10 is not equivalent to 50 ringgit to the higher income community. Will the higher income community feel this burden? No. Will they regret? No. Will they feel remorse? No. That is why I say is that if we punish based on the income, it will be more effective, as my Prime Minister has stated. Okay, and then they go on saying that it goes against the public eye, and because they will do smoking, they will do speeding, because the fine is only based on the income, and they will take it into advantage. Again, it will be based on your income. The rates will feel the burden. The people will feel the burden. No matter if you are rich or you are poor, the burden, the ratio will be the same. Let's say you are someone that earns 100 ringgit. If the ratio is 1 to 2 of your income, then they will have to pay 50 ringgit. If the richer, let's say they earn 100,000 and the ratio is 1 to 2, then they will pay 50,000. And let's say the ratio is the same, it is 1 to 2. So both sides will feel the same burden. And again, it will be more effective and punishment. Okay, and again, if let's say if you were to state that the case as the opposition has stated that the public goes smoking, goes speeding. Why do we still see that? It's because these crimes are done by the higher income people. They speed, they smoke sometimes because they don't feel the burden of the current pay rates. They earn more, and these rates are only little to them. That is why we should punish them according to their income. Okay, and again, they say that society will look at crimes as because it is little, because it is diminishable, and they will take advantage of the current motion that we, the government, are proposing. No, because again, we are stating that we are going to punish them according to their income and create a certain ratio that is going to be justable and that is going to be justified and correct. Again, I would like to emphasize the point that it will be more effective. This brings me to my first point. Is that again, I would like to state the motion is that momentary criminal fines are going to be based on the income of the perpetrator as opposed to the severity of the crime. Okay, this will create an equally economic status. Why? As I mentioned before, if let's say the criminal rates were, if the perpetrator is somewhere from B10, from a lower class income, and they did a criminal that requires a base of 100 ringgit, and they only earn 500 ringgit. Okay, and you are going to give this same amount of fine to someone from a higher income. It will only affect a little bit of their income, whereas the poor will feel the burden and the impact of this fine, and they will become poorer. The poor will become poorer, and the rich will not feel the burden, and it will only affect their money, their income, a little bit. Okay. Now, I would like also to say that if we are going to implement this motion, there is going to be a fair ratio that is going to be based on the crime also. But the highlight of today is the fine. The fine that is going to be implemented on the person is going to be based on the income. For example, let's say let's say we take someone from higher status. They earn maybe, let's say, 100,000 ringgit, and they are told you to pay a fine of 50 ringgit. As I said before, it will not affect their income. That brings me to my second point: is excellent governance. Excellent governance is because the public will feel justified when they see, let's say, a politician that steals the people's money, tax money, and that costs them hundreds and millions of ringgit and takes the wages of their own people. But they are only told to pay, let's say, a crime of only 100,000 ringgit when they have stolen billions and billions of ringgit. And again, the severity will not make them will not make them regret, will not make them feel remorse. And the public will get mad. Why is someone that has stolen billions of money, of the people's money, being told to pay the same fine as someone that maybe perhaps only stolen a car? Okay. Again, furthermore, the punishment is justified, and they feel justified, and they feel like the criminal, the perpetrator has done, is going to serve the correct amount of punishment, the people will support the government and later on create a more what did they say? Create a more society that will fear crimes, a society that will stop doing these crimes because they will feel the burden of these fines. They will stop doing these crimes. And again, I would like to state that we are focusing on momentary criminal fines. Momentary criminal fines are, as stated as my Prime Minister, is crimes that involves money, as such as stealing and fraud. So we are able to stop and avoid this because the people will feel the burden, will feel that the fines are going to be implemented. And they stated on how the opposition has stated on how will the law be able to find the income. Will find the income. Well, law, they can research that. Do not look measly on our court and our law and our government. Thank you. That is why today the government should win this motion, which is momentary criminal fines should be based on the severity of the income of the perpetrator as opposed to the crimes. Thank you.
My speech in 3, 2, 1. My Prime Minister, as my leader of opposition, has already given you a burden push that side of government needs to solve. But they didn't really listen to that. Not only did they not give you a clear mechanization to how exactly this bill would be passed. I have a few questions to ask about regarding the mechanization. Firstly, what exactly is the mechanization for this bill to be passed? Secondly, how exactly do the police determine the adequate fine to be given to these people at the end of the day? Thirdly, how exactly do these police actually find out the income of this person on the spot? Fourth, how do you think public will react to this bill being passed? Because we on the side of opposition believe that the public's reaction to this fine is detrimental to the effectiveness. Because like my first speaker has told you, when these people find out that fines are not being given evenly, we tell you that the entire idea of justice is not served. These questions are the burden that opposition is trying to push on government. They have to tell you why exactly does their mechanism work at the end of the day. Because we tell you, if this mechanism doesn't actually happen at the first place, we tell you that the benefits do not materialize. I'll be taking you later. Because the only real marginal benefit that you get from sort of opposition throughout this entire debate is merely getting remorse from the rich people. That is merely rehashed over and over again by second speaker. First speaker only tells you that, now the rich people are actually going to feel the effects of fines. Second speaker keeps on giving examples of different varying amounts of dollars and ringgit for different varying amounts of crime. And not only that, my first speaker has already told you that the right characterization, the real true meaning of monetary crime is crimes that actually require you to pay fines in the first place. Right? We don't actually concede to the characterization that they're giving you that monetary crime is a crime that involves money. But even if we were to go on that characterization, even if we were to be charitable on that behalf, we still tell you that we take this debate considering the fact that one, in status quo, the people who are actually committing these crimes in the first place are the poor, which I'll be explaining more in my argument. And secondly, on our side of the house, we actually are able to give punishments that are more fair and that give actual incentive for these people to change in the first place. A few things I'll be doing in my speech today. Firstly, giving a few rebuttals as well as my own substantive argument. Right. Let's engage with the two main clashes coming from side of government. Firstly, the whole idea about the rich being in remorse. Let me recharacterize this for you. Why exactly does crime exist? Who are the ones committing the crime in the first place? We tell you that on the side of opposition, the main people committing the crime are the poor people. No, this is not a stigmatization, but it is a clear strategic analysis. Why exactly is this true? Why do I say this? We believe that on the side of opposition, in status quo, the people who are actually committing crimes in the first place are the poor because they are merely committing crimes of necessity, which is the real characterization. We believe that these people commit crimes because they have to. They actually need to actually commit this crime in order to sustain their living costs. They need to steal food. They need to steal money because they themselves do not have the ability to do so. The rich are not actually incentivized to commit these crimes in the first place because they don't have to. They have the money, they have all that they want. The only real incentive for these rich people to actually commit crimes in the first place is because they want to have fun or seek seek the thrill. But I tell you then that the reason why these rich people don't actually have the incentive to commit crimes in the first place is not because of the crime. It's not because of the money that they are given in terms of fine. We tell you these people don't commit crimes because of the social effect that they will have. Understand, these rich people carry a high social status. So the real benefit, the real effect that goes towards them when they commit a crime is the social detriment that they will face. Their social status will drop. The amount of people actually investing in the company that they may have brought up will actually drop. We tell you that there's no incentive for these rich people to actually commit crimes in the first place. We tell you that this destroys the case coming from side of government because this is the whole pillar that side of government was actually contingent on in the first place. We tell you that the benefits from their side do not materialize for two reasons. The first, they didn't actually give you any clear mechanism to prove why this bill will pass in the first place. Secondly, they don't actually tell you how this bill will actually look like. How will people even give the fines in the first place? How exactly do you expect these police to find the income of these people in the first place? We tell you for all these reasons, this impact does not materialize. And even if it does, even if we follow their flawed characterization, we still tell you that they are not solving the root problem. They are not solving. There's no real problem in rich people committing crimes, considering the fact that in status quo, in many different socio-economic communities, the real people committing the crime are the poor, not because they are less educated, but it's because of the fact that they do not have any financial support. They need to commit these crimes in order to keep on living. This is the root problem that they have to solve on their side of the house, but they are clearly not doing, and this is clearly what side of government opposition is doing for you. Now, moving on to my argument about how there is no accountability for severe crime. Two premises of my argument today. The first, how a narrative of crimes will begin to exist, and secondly, how individuals will always be able to pay. First premise of how a new narrative is made. Understand that this is a policy debate in which this policy will be enacted by the government. So we say that in a world where, in government's world, which is actually their job to characterize for you, but it's me doing it, but in their world, when you actually pass this bill, people will then have this narrative that, oh, all crimes are the same. Why exactly is this so? Because at the rate in which the motion states, it's not based on severity, it's based on your income. The amount of money you get for any crime in and of itself is due to your income. Even if we follow that flawed characterization, just to be charitable, right, in this debate, we tell you that the idea still doesn't work, because at the end of the day, if a person were to steal from a convenience store or a person were to steal from a bank, we tell you that these people still do not have hope. These people will still view these things as the same. Why exactly is this so? Because now you're basically saying that, oh, these two types of crimes are the same because you pay the same amount. Right. So we tell you that in the span of 50 to 25 years, we tell you that the narrative is that these crimes are the same. No matter how bad it is, you have to pay the same amount at the end of the day. Now, second premise is about how individuals will always be able to pay. Let me give you an example. Let's just say, for example, the cost of impeding your car were to be 5,000 ringgit. Right. We tell you that a person who had a lower socio-economic background would not be able to pay this fine due to the fact that they only make 2,000 a month. Right. But at the end of the day, now when you're implementing this whole new policy, everyone will be able to actually pay. They will actually be able to sustain the fines that they receive in the first place. So we tell you that at the end of the day, by enacting this policy, the people who, no matter how rich or how poor they may be, the amount of money that they have to pay at the end of the day is still the same. They will always be able to support this. When, as opposed to the opposition world, some fines are actually not payable at all by the people in lower socio-economic backgrounds, which at the end of the day are the people who are causing these problems in the first place. What have I done to you in this debate today? I've already proven to you, I've already given the burden on side of government to prove to you why exactly does that policy materialize. Insofar in which they do not give you a clear mechanism to why this necessarily happens, we tell you that their benefits don't materialize. We've also re-characterized this debate, but there's no real response coming from outside of government. And at the end of the day, the whole case is contingent on the rich. So we tell you that if these rich people don't have an incentive to cause crime, we don't have an incentive to make this policy come true. For all those reasons, never provided to close.
Gentlemen, members of the floor, the oppositions keep on complaining about how we, as the side of government, keep on giving examples upon examples as to why we support this motion. However, ladies and gentlemen, they themselves do not understand neither the motion or the examples given. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the motion today that this house, but before that, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning I bid to the members of the floor. Now, standing before you, debating upon the motion that this house would have monetary criminal fines be based on the income of perpetrator as opposed to the severity of the crime. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as said by my Prime Minister, that monetary criminal fines are any activities that allows an individual or group to obtain a certain asset unlawfully or illegally, which means that what we are trying to fight for is that based on a certain crime that involves money, the perpetrator has to pay the amount of fines given based on their income Now, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, leader of the opposition has stated how our side is going against the law or going against the whole justice. However, we are still having the criminals to held accountable to what they did. Our Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister has clearly stated, but clearly not heard by the side of opposition, that the fines are based on crimes, but also based on income. As an example, if that was not clear enough, if there was two people, a poor and a rich, if they both did fraud and if they both did any kind of monetary criminal such as fraud, money laundering, or even bribery, they would be paid. They would be asked to pay for fines based on that crime, but also based on their income. As an example, what we actually mean by that was explained by my Deputy Prime Minister, that they would have rates for every single crimes that they did. As an example, for example, if they have to pay 50,000 ringgit for fraud, then it probably would be like, as stated, it would be one of two for the poor and one of two for the rich. So it means that, as also stated by my Prime Minister earlier, that 50 ringgit, ladies and gentlemen, are not the same for the poor and for the rich. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition, please open your eyes. Look at the current situation. Not only do we have T20, you are not paying attention at all at those who are poor. You are only thinking about punishing them. And also, in one of your strongest point, I bet, you are stating that, oh, what will the public view us as? Now, let me ask you, ladies and gentlemen, and the opposition, what will the public view us as if we keep on punishing them instead of actually looking at their state, looking at why they are struggling in the first place? Why aren't we taking care of them at all? So, in this case, ladies and gentlemen, when we are taking care of, when we are asking them to pay the fines based on their income, they would actually still feel the burden. However, like said before, I do not understand why the opposition isn't so clear that 50 ringgit is not the same for both of the perpetrators, for the rich and the poor. Now, the leader of opposition has also stated that the crimes happen mostly due to the background, exactly as to what I have answered earlier. If it happens due to the background, then why don't you focus on how to actually lessen their burden and how to actually motivate them to not do what they are doing? As stated by my Deputy Prime Minister, it would actually help to govern our country more smoothly. Why? Why do I say so? Because when they actually believe that we have trust in them, that we actually care for them, then our citizens would be in much more better hand. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Deputy Leader of Opposition, has stated that how are you going to find the rates of the crime immediately? Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear behind any shadow of doubt that the opposition has not been once watching any court shows or any have not seen how the court goes. The court can goes on for months or even years. What do you mean by immediate action or immediate finement? Now, with that being said, I think it is more than clear that the points coming from them that the citizens would not like this idea is totally wrong, because you can see that the citizens would be more obliged to it. Why? Because look at the middle class, for example. Because before this, we have only been talking about T20 and B10. Now, look at the M40 or M20. They are stuck in the middle. It's either they lost a lot of money or they lost nothing at all. So, what do we do with them? Of course, when they look at when they look at this idea, of course they will know that it benefits them as well, as long as they didn't do the crime. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the opposition also keep on stating that most of the crimes are done by those people who are poor. Then what about the rich people who does money laundering, who does bribery? Those are such big cases that they didn't even talk about. Now, they also stated that most of the crimes are done based on necessity. While it may be true, however, they fail to realize, and also one of the examples given, which is smoking and also illegal racing, those kind of things. Do you think that the poor will be able actually buy cigarettes? Do you think the B10 who half of them couldn't even read could actually buy money to cigarettes or even to buy motorcycles? I do not think so. The opposition themselves has also been so focused on the poor, but also contradicts themselves as the strongest point, which is that they say that what will the public view us as? What exactly do you actually mean by that when you are actually putting them in much more burden? Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are points coming from the side of government to them. However, they did answer it, but so vaguely that we do not accept any of their responses. Now, onto the points coming from my Prime Minister, which is that by having monetary criminal fines be based on the income of perpetrator as opposed to severity of the crime, it will give a much more effective punishment. Why? As said before, on and on again. However, which is not understandable to the opposition, that we are trying to give the same rate to the opposition and as to the poor and to the rich, so that they could both be impacted and also have a lesson learned and also benefits and burden at the same time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look at certain countries in the world when they are facing inflations, like said by my Prime Minister, the really poor will still be poor and the rich will still be rich or not being burdened at all. Now, if we do this, it could help stabilize the economy a little bit. Now, if you can see, our points given do not only think about the government itself, but also think about the citizens and also the other people that is involved in our country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you also have to realize for certain crimes like bribes and fraud. And with that being said, thank you. I rest my case.
In 3, 2, 1. We on side opposition are still waiting for government's metric or what exactly is this finding supposed to do. Do they want to cripple these people, these criminals to the point where they are literally close to bankrupt? What are they trying to make them? Are they trying to make these people, aware of their crimes? We still don't even get a metric of what exactly is this finding supposed to achieve. At the end of the day, from the whole bench of side government, they still haven't proven to you at all. And by this point, it's already way too late, right? But before I move on, a little bit of framework of how my speech is going to go. First, two clashes onto what this debate is supposed. Two clashes onto the main incentives of the debate, and prove to you why essentially on the outside of the house we have proven better. Second, I'll be weighing you the benefits on the practical and principal benefits under both sides of the house. Third, I'll then be comparing both cases and pointing out the call outs on government's problematic case, right? So, now, first clash then. Is the principle of the justice system actually preserved, right? We tell you that on the outside of the house from our first speaker that changing the metric of punishment literally devalues the severity of these crimes, right? What this is to say that all mandatory crimes are not going to be the same price. What does this look like? Essentially, the fine of these monetary crimes, the value of the fine of these monetary crimes is going to be the same for everyone, because you are basically using the same metric, you're using the same sort of calculation, I guess, through the bare mechanism they try to give you in order to find these people at the end of the day, right? And we will tell you then that from our first speaker also that this is detrimental towards the incentives of these people who commit these crimes in the first place. We get no engagement from this coming from side of government, which just goes to show that this point still goes on. But I will do a little bit of weighing later and prove to you why this is something that is important and why it is something that's only exclusive to our side of the house, right? Second thing then, the value of all crimes are the same towards everyone. So they don't really understand the nuance of these crimes under side of government. What this means is that essentially, under side of government, let's say like a crime, before this policy took place, a poor person wants to commit a crime and this crime is like what, 1,000 ringgit or something. But now with this policy intact, it becomes severely cheaper, right? So what this means is, number one, these people can now commit crimes in which they couldn't do before this, which incentivizes these people to do these crimes. And number two, essentially what happens is then, these people literally think every single crime has the same amount of weight because it is the same metric of calculating how much they should be fined at the end of the day. This is something that my first and second speaker already clearly proven to you that is something that shouldn't happen at the end of the day, right? What is the response then? Whip suddenly goes off saying that it takes a long time to finalize things and on the outside of the house you get no immediate action. We find this point really, really problematic considering the fact that they give you no logical links as to what exactly is the impact of this idea at the end of the day. We just goes to show like we can't really credit them for this argument, and on the outside of the house we are still questioning like this whole idea. Are they saying that it should take like 100 days to finalize the fine of smoking? We don't know, right? We just goes to show that we take this clash. Second clash then, why on the outside of the house we incentivize less crime, right?
Literally every monetary crime is affordable on site government, meaning to say that poor people can do this crime. My second speaker already told you why essentially it is in the incentives of these poor people to do these crimes of necessity, because they need the necessity, right? Their response then is that, oh, but then rich people won't understand the value of their crimes. They won't be affected because, let's say, like one person made $100,000 and all he has to do is just pay like 1% of his actual income to get out of this crime. But we say no. The reason as to why in status quo rich people avoid doing crime is not because it's too expensive or whatnot, right? The reason why in status quo rich people don't do crime is because the cost of crime is not just money, it's not just fine. It is also your reputation, your status. This is why in status quo rich people do not do crime. But this is also why in status quo, most of the time poor people do crimes of necessity, because they think that they don't even have this status at the end of the day. We've been pushing you this whole ideology throughout our whole bench, proving to you that under side of government, this whole ideology of saying that rich people won't understand their crimes is something that's probably not going to even happen at the end of the day, but they just disregard it towards their whole bench and just keep on recycling the same idea, telling you that this person who makes $100,000 won't even feel the need, or won't even feel the need to stop doing this crime because he won't feel remorse at the end of the day. We already told you to our whole bench this is something that is not going to happen at the end of the day, right?
QR,
Yeah, sure.
you mentioned that rich people do not do crimes, so are you just completely ignoring all the crimes that's been committed by the rich?
We didn't say that rich people don't do crimes. Every sort of person from every sort of socio-economic background do crimes, right? But what we're saying on the outside of the house is that most of the time, rich people don't even have the incentive to do crime, because they understand that when they do these certain crimes, their reputation goes down. We're not trying to say that on the outside of the house, literally nobody's going to do any crime. No, we're telling you that on the outside of the house, when these rich people, we're telling you that on your side of the house, this ideology that rich people will now do crimes every single day, every single second, because essentially on the outside they won't feel remorse. We tell you that this idea is not going to work. This is what we meant throughout this class, right? So it just goes to show that on the outside of the house, when you incentivize less crime, you essentially get a better community. It's just logic, right? Now, moving on to actually weighing the practical and principal benefits under both sides of the house. The only like sensible benefit that I think we get from side of government is the fact that maybe like poor people won't go bankrupt, considering the fact that like this idea is the only thing that they push from first speaker, considering the fact that okay, now at least poor people they won't go super poor, or at least they won't go bankrupt or lose all their money, right? But we tell you that number one, this idea is very problematic, considering the fact that on the outside of the house we tell you and we actually make these poor people disincentivized to go and do crime at the end of the day, because normally these are the people who do their crimes, right? And second then is that on the other side of the house, they then give you no exclusive benefits, right? They try and tell you that the people will understand the value of these crimes, they will feel remorse, but we tell you no, on the outside of the house, these things either stay the same or are better for these people, especially the poor, right? So what do you get on the outside of the house then? Number one, people actually have accountability for their crimes, they understand what they're doing and they try to avoid it. Number two, you maintain the value and severity of these crimes at the end of the day, which is something that is very important for the criminal justice system, for them to actually carry out their justifications at the end of the day. And number three, we disincentivize poor people to do crime of necessity, because at the end of the day, these people on the outside of the house understand they can't do it. Even if they really, really want to do that crime, even if they really, really want to steal, they simply can't do it because they can't afford the causes of this at the end of the day. Right, now, moving on to the last part of my speech, call-outs on government's problematic case, right? First, they literally get the understanding of the monetary criminal fines wrong. They tell you that it is, they tell you monetary criminal fines are fines that involve money. No, we tell you that monetary criminal fines are essentially crimes that involve a fine, right? They then give you no mechanization on how exactly is that case supposed to work. Instead, they give you like a ratio from second speaker of punishment. I think this is supposed to be their backup towards their mechanization. But we tell you that number one, there's no logical links as to how that's supposed to work. And number two, it's already way too late because it's coming up from second speaker. All the tangible benefits that they provide to you under their side of the house are non-mutually exclusive. That's to say, still available under outside of the house. And we prove to you that literally all of their benefits simply don't work at the end of the day. What do we give you then? We give you viable arguments with actual logical links as to how they work, and they still stand to the end of this debate. We give you the actual definition of the motion and the playing ground, and most importantly, we were able to fulfill and push our burden unlike side of government. So if they want to try and do that at the end of the speech, in reply speaker, we will tell you that it's already way too late to respond because that's not the place to do so, right? So with all those reasons, side with opposition. Yeah.
Harming the stakeholders within the debate today. We say that, and we know for a fact that because of the lack and poor disguise at the time of the case in the first place is what is going to be the downfall of the debate today. First, what are the things and ideas circulating throughout this entire debate? Now first, is within the idea of characterization, and second is how you're alienating the most vulnerable of individuals in the first place. Now, first, lack of characterization. What do I mean by that? Look at that case. the first speaker already got the definition wrong, which the first speaker talked about upon and have debated on their front was also debating on the front that they should have debated on in the first place. And then most of the things such as the judicial system came towards the third speaker, which ultimately does not give any sort of impact because of new material at the end of the day. So what are my three speakers giving you? First, we have given the apparent logical links and the rationale of certain individuals to do these things in the first place, and how exactly are we not alienating the most vulnerable of individuals in the first place. Okay, look, what do we mean by this main idea of alienating the most vulnerable of individuals living in status quo when enacted by this policy in the first place? Okay, look, they are trying to say that we want to get on equal grounds, poor and rich people at the start, but they never really told you how much appropriate how appropriate the fine should be in the first place. Is it to spread awareness that you should not be doing these things in the first place? Is it really to cripple them financially, to cause them to be bankrupt and such? 3, is it really to just give a hit onto their wallets and tell them, let them off with a light up warning? A lot of questions, a lot of things. But first, what if to say the main incentive or the main idea for them to do it in the first place was to actually give an impact towards these billionaires, towards these millionaires, is what they call it, on their front. Now, first, as my second speaker has said, the poor people are committing crimes of necessity. That is to say, the reason why they are committing crimes in the first place is to allow them to actually live in status quo. While on the rich, on the other hand, as my second speaker said, if we were to follow upon their lack of narrative, or maybe you want to financially cripple them to the point of which you bring them on an equilibrium ground, ultimately, what you're doing is there's no apparent logical need to do so in the first place. First, what's the rationality of billionaires or millionaires to do it in the first place? Sure, they may talk about things like, they will do want to do because things like money laundering and such. But this is not the case of this debate today. The case of the debate is talk about the quote-unquote petty crimes. But if we were to follow their narrative and apply it to what is actually should be said towards the entire debate, is that these people, these billionaires committing such petty crimes will get hit by a financial loss so hard to the point of which they get to feel as how like the poor people do. And ultimately, this would go against and aligns with the will and incentive of these rich people. Now, what do you do with these poor people? Because there are a lot of questions left. What are you going to do? These poor people are going to go bankrupt or financially cripple them because you want them to be the same level as billionaires in the first place. A lot of questions that were circulating around this debate, they were not answered. Okay, let me summarize what happened throughout this course of debate. First, the government side have been rehashing the same idea over and over again, how they're trying to create equal ground for both parties in the first place, the both poor and lower socioeconomic class in the first place. They're rehashed. Now, my second and third speaker has clearly taken down all their ideas, but the lack of engagement on their side were quite surprising to say the least. Now, the first speaker, the lack of characterization, as I told you, we debated on their front, the first and second speaker, and we have debated on our front on what should have been debated upon in the first place. And ultimately, we proved to you that why exactly these stakeholders are something that we adhere to, and why ultimately we are fighting for the rights of these individuals. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, to sum up what today's debate was, the government were debating on the motion is that monetary criminal fines should be based on the income of the perpetrators as opposed to the severity of the crime. And here in this case, the opposition seems to be delusional. Yet they are also wrong, because the meaning of monetary criminal fines has been stated by my Prime Minister, which is any activities that allows an individual or group to obtain a certain asset. And we can see that our case is correct if we implement our main definition, and can also be implemented in that definition because our case is correct. Our points that we have given are correct. Okay. Now they also have stated, the opposition has stated to rebuttal our points. They have stated that it will go against the principle of law because the crimes will be in the same rate. And to further elaborate this point, they have stated that it is because all crimes will be given the same rate. But we, the government, have never stated that all the crimes will be given the same rate. No, we have stated that the rates will be set differently. The rates will be set accordingly and definitely punish the perpetrator correctly and make them feel remorse according to their income, not to the types of crimes. Because we, the government, have never stated that each crime will be given will be given the same rate. No, we are implementing that different crimes will be given different rates. Okay, now we are going to be saying that the period of time, they also have stated that we have never, we have to focus back on the motion, which is the that why monetary crimes should be based on income rather than the severity. That is the motion today, not how we are going to implement. This can be further on discussed when we have said that this is more correct. And this also has been more addressed on my third speaker. Now, again, they also said they have only been narrow-sighted. They only focus on the poor by saying the rich will not do crimes, and by saying that they say the status quo, the statistics of the rich doing crimes are less. Yes, but again, you have to think about the crimes that the rich do. They are knowledgeable people. They are people that can think, they are well-educated, meaning the crimes that they do are in more higher rates. The impact it does to society is also much more. And also, the fines we are giving them are so little that it doesn't even affect them. Is this correct? Is this justice? No, we say no. That is why, again, monetary criminal crimes should be based on income rather than severity of the crime. Okay. They are also saying that we are only thinking about making the poor not poorer or trying to just be flexible. No, we are not saying that, because the fines, the rates will be based on, the fines, the rates will be severe, will be burdening for them to feel remorse, for the punishment to be effective, which is the reason of the justice of the punishment. That is why we have fines. That is why we punish them. Okay, and now for my first speaker, she has stated why we should implement this motion is because it produces a more effective punishment. It is not less burdening. It is burdening for the rich, it is burdening for the fair. It is equal, yet still effective. And this brings me to the second point, which is equality increases equality in economic status. Everyone gets the burden, everyone feels remorse, and it will be effective and will create a nation that will stop doing crimes. And third, our point was, will create a more excellent government. No one will feel the remorse towards the government that feels that the punishment is injustice. No, because everyone will feel the burden. Thank you. That is why today I assure you the government should win this debate, which is monetary criminal fines